Some things, science can explain part of them, while the other part remains in the unknown darkness. My name is Lin Yu, and I am a mental health counselor. Let me tell you a story that began in 2000 in a village near Thousand Lotus Mountain. Near the Thousand Lotus Mountain, there was a village where a farmer named Chen Zhuang lived. He was 30 and still unmarried. In rural northeast China at that time, being unmarried at 30 was shameful, and no one would introduce him to a girlfriend. Chen Zhuang had little education or skill, living a hard life with only a few fruit trees. That spring, Chen Zhuang went up the mountain to dig for wild vegetables. Tired, he leaned against a tree to rest. Just then, he heard a low whimper from the bushes. He parted the branches and saw a silver-white fox with its hind leg caught in a rusty trap. There was dried blood on its leg. The fox's eyes were not fierce, but full of fear, pleading, and despair. Chen Zhuang pried the trap open with a piece of wire. The fox limped into the woods, glanced back, and disappeared. Chen Zhuang patted his hands and continued digging, not giving it another thought. On his way home, he saw fellow villager Liu Qing standing under an old locust tree, holding a stack of money. Liu Qing said triumphantly, 20,000 yuan, found it on the mountain wrapped in newspaper, buried in a tree pit. Chen Zhuang was upset. I was on the mountain all day. Why didn't I find it? He went home dejectedly. That night, he tossed and turned. 20,000 yuan in rural China in 2000. That was years of earnings. At midnight, he had a dream. In the dream, thick fog, a voice came from within, ethereal, like a woman's, but not quite.
Chen Zhuang.
He looked around nervously. A silver glowing fox with amber eyes emerged from the mist.
I am a fox spirit who has cultivated for 100 years. Today, you saved my life, and I have come to thank you. I will give you 20,000 yuan to repay the favor. If you ever need help, come to the Fox Spirit Temple on the mountain.
Then the fog lifted. Chen Zhuang woke up, covered in sweat. The sky was already lightening. He smiled bitterly and muttered to himself, where on the mountain is there a Fox Spirit Temple? I've lived here all my life. How could I not know? He turned over and put the dream out of his mind. One day, after selling wild vegetables in the city, Chen Zhuang passed by a market and saw an out-of-town merchant buying a local herb called shady slope ginseng. It grew on the shady side of the mountain, looked like ginseng, and prices had been rising. Chen Zhuang inquired about prices from the out-of-town businessman. The merchant said, "How many do you have? I'll take them all." They exchanged numbers. The next day, before dawn, Chen Zhuang went up the mountain with his basket. The shady side never saw sun, the ground covered with decayed leaves. Chen Zhuang knew the mountain well. That spring, he went up at dawn and returned at dusk, obsessed. In the end, he earned 20,000 yuan. That evening, He spread the money on the table, drinking and eating happily. This money came too easily, like a gift from heaven, he thought. He raised his glass. Then his smile froze.
I will give you 20,000 yuan to repay the favor.
The dream flashed through his mind. The fox spirit had promised him 20,000 yuan, and there it was, exactly that amount. His hands trembled. He remembered his grandmother's stories. Foxes have spirits. They repay kindness and seek revenge. He had always been superstitious. At this moment, he believed completely. The fox spirit was real. Next morning, he went to find the oldest man in the village, old Liu, over 80, slightly hard of hearing, but sharp. After some pleasantries, Chen Zhuang got straight to the point. Old Liu squinted and thought for a long time before saying, Fox Spirit Temple. Yes, it's behind the mountain by the old pine tree. Yes, that little temple houses the fox spirit. Chen Zhuang was startled. The fox spirit hadn't lied. For the next few days, Chen Zhuang searched the mountain frantically, like a lost soul, but found nothing. On the fourth day, exhausted, he leaned against a large pine tree and closed his eyes. Dappled sunlight filtered through the needle's dot. He drifted off. Then he heard a voice calling.
Chen Zhuang.
He opened his eyes. In the thin mist, the silver-white fox stood just a few steps away. Chen Zhuang fell to his knees, pressed his forehead to the ground, and said excitedly, Fox Spirit, thank you. Fox Spirit, thank you. That 20,000 yuan, you gave it to me, didn't you? The Fox Spirit said calmly,
That money should have been found by you, but you were delayed saving me. So Liu Qing got there first.
The Fox Spirit asked,
What do you want from me?
He raised his head and said, with tears in his eyes, Fox Spirit, I want to get married. The Fox Spirit was silent for a moment.
That's difficult. You are not destined for marriage.
Chen Zhuang said with tears in his eyes, Please help me. Just then, an old voice came from afar. Chen Zhuang, where are you? It was old Liu. He glanced back, then turned. The fox spirit had vanished. He shouted into the empty forest, Don't go. You haven't agreed. No answer. Old Liu's voice came closer. Wake up. Wake up. Don't sleep. Chen Zhuang followed and saw old Liu squatting under a tree, pushing someone who was leaning against the trunk with eyes closed. He stepped closer. It was himself. He screamed and sat up abruptly. He was still under the pine tree, covered in cold sweat. Old Liu patted at his chest and said, You child, I heard you shouting, Fox Spirit. When I went closer, I found you leaning against a tree, fast asleep as if dead. I pushed you for a long time, and you wouldn't budge. Old Mr. Liu sighed and said, This morning, I suddenly remembered that the Fox Spirit Temple was demolished after the liberation. I heard you've been wandering around the mountain this past few days, and I figured you must be looking for that temple, so I rushed up here to tell you. Chen Zhuang gasped and told him everything about the dream, saving the fox and making money. The older man squatted, lit his pipe, took a puff. After a long time, he said, Chen Zong, it seems you have been chosen by the immortals. Old Liu said, he'd heard such stories as a child. If a deity chose you, you must invite it home. Normally, a century-old fox spirit wouldn't live in a farmer's home, but her temple was gone, and she had nowhere else to go. If you sincerely invited her and she agreed to come, you would never have to worry about food or clothing for the rest of your life. The next day, Chen Zhuang went to the city to hire a master who was proficient in Eastern soul summoning techniques. The master, who was skilled in Eastern spirit summoning techniques, was surnamed Zhou, and the locals called him Zhou, the half-immortal. After Zhao, the half-immortal, arrived at Xianzhang's house, he set up an altar in the east room, covered it with a red cloth, and placed a wooden plaque on it with the words, "Position of the Fox Spirit," written in cinnabar. Zhao, the half-immortal, told Chen Zhuang that one should not offer expensive incense to the fox spirit, only ordinary herbal incense. Offerings should not include beef or dog meat, a dish of pastries, a dish of fruit, and a cup of water are best. The consecration ceremony took place at night. Zhao, the half-immortal, lit incense, burned paper money, chanted incantations, and walked around the room 3 times while ringing a copper bell. Finally, he had Jin Zhuang kneel before the offering table, close his eyes, and silently recite 3 times, "Please invite the fox spirit to reside here." Chen Zhuang did as instructed. He closed his eyes, his heart pounding. The room was utterly quiet, save for the sound of incense ash falling. Zhao, the half-immortal, said, "It's a success. The fox spirit has agreed to live in your house from now on." Zhan Zhang opened his eyes. Although he couldn't see anything, he felt particularly at ease. Before leaving, Zhao, the half-immortal, repeatedly instructed Chen Zhang. Unlike the orthodox deities of Buddhism and Taoism, fox spirits are straightforward and have a clear sense of right and wrong. If you sincerely worship them, they will naturally protect you. But there are 2 things you must remember. First, one must not disrespect the fox spirit. The offerings on the altar must be complete. Incense must be burned on the 1st and 15th of each lunar month, and one must kowtow during festivals. Secondly, and most importantly, a fox spirit is a fox. From now on, you must never harm a fox, not even have the thought of harming one. If you harm one of her kind, she will retaliate. At that time, even the gods cannot save you. Chen Zhong kept these words firmly in mind. When the fox spirit first arrived, Chen Zhong didn't feel that his life had changed much. He just felt particularly at ease and confident in everything he did. People had advised him to plant more fruit trees before, but he hesitated for 2 years and didn't dare to do it. After the fox spirit moved in, he used all of his 20,000 yuan to buy fruit tree seedlings, leaving nothing behind. He grew 1-scented pears. This fruit could only be grown in the soil and water at the foot of Thousand Lotus Mountain. It had thin skin, thick flesh, and a perfect balance of sweet and sour, making it a favorite among city dwellers. The few trees Chen Zhuang used to grow sold well every year. Now he had planted a large orchard of them. After the fruit harvest, Chen Zhuang carried a basket of fragrant pears to the city to sell. He set up a stall in the market and shouted his wares at the top of his lungs. That very day, a woman stopped in front of his stall. She was wearing a faded plaid coat. Her hair was in a ponytail, and her face was slightly red from the wind. She picked up a fruit, looked at it, and asked, "How much are these pears?" Chen Zhuang quoted a price. The woman smiled and said, "I'm a purchasing agent for a cannery. Your fruit is of good quality. If you can supply it regularly, we can talk." This woman's name was Li Yu. She was 27 years old that year, and after graduating from university, she had been in charge of raw material procurement at a cannery. That night, Chen Zhong had another dream. The fox spirit stood in the mist, her voice softer than ever before.
郑壮，李秀英 will be your future wife.
Chen Zhuang knelt on the ground and kowtowed to express his gratitude. The fox spirit said,
I helped you because I saw your sincerity. I won't stay in your house for free. As long as you don't slack off or cause any major trouble, I will bless your life to get better and better. Also, when you see my kind, you must cherish them and never harm them.
Chen Zhuang readily agreed. From then on, Chen Zhong frequently visited the cannery, delivering fruit, samples, and invoices, trying every possible way to get close to Li Yu. At first, Li Yu politely refused him, but as time went on, she discovered that although the man was not very educated, he was down to earth, hardworking, and not a bad person. The two gradually came together. That autumn, they got married. Chen Zhong didn't tell his wife about the fox spirit. He knew she was educated and didn't believe in such things. He told Li Yu that the room was dedicated to Chen family ancestors. Because it was a Chinese tradition, Li Yu didn't ask any further questions. Life after marriage was even better than Chen Zhuang had imagined. The yield of wine-scented pears in his yard increased year by year, and the fruit was big and sweet. The orders from the cannery grew bigger and bigger every year. A few years later, Chen Zhuang was no longer satisfied with just being a supplier to canneries. He started renting stalls in the city's agricultural wholesale market and began a fruit wholesale business. His business grew bigger and bigger, and his life got better and better. Chen Zhang knew in his heart that all of this was thanks to the fox spirit.